We are on filmsgonewild.com. My name is John Wildman, and we're going to talk to filmmakers from a few shorts that are screening at the EARTHxFILM Festival in Dallas. And let's go through, and I'm going to, even though I know who I'm talking to, we'll have each one of you introduce yourselves. So let's start with our team from Arctic Summer. Kyle and Daniel, introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Kyle, one of the co-directors of Arctic Summer.
And I'm Daniel, the other co-director of Arctic Summer.
Okay, and Matthew, you're up. Uh-oh. Matthew, we lost your sound. There you go.
Because y'all muted us. There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Mills. I'm the producer of Life Below Water, directed by Brian Schultz.
And Anjali is our woman of mystery. Anjali, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Anjali Nayar, and I am the director of District 15, based in Los Angeles.
Wonderful. I'm excited to talk about each one of these films. And we routinely start this with having our filmmakers introduce our audience to the films. They have not had a chance, likely, to see these films as yet. So once again, Team Arctic Summer, tell our audience about the film.
Yeah, so Arctic Summer is a short documentary that Kyle and I made when we were still undergrads at the University of Pennsylvania. We got some funding there to travel up to the Arctic indigenous town of Tuktoyaktuk. We wanted to make a film about this because I had taken a course on Arctic politics and started learning about all these indigenous communities that were living in the Arctic and how climate change and globalization was impacting their ways of life and their tradition. So Kyle and I applied for some grants from our university, got the funding, and traveled up there to shoot this film. I think what we were planning on capturing is not what we ended up making our film into, but Kyle can talk more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm anxious to we'll get back to you guys because I definitely want to delve into just what this film became. Matthew, let's have you talk about introduce us to your film.
You bet. Life Below Water is a short doc narrated by Morgan Freeman, featuring beautiful underwater cinematography about an emerging new species in our oceans, destined to take them over. You'll have to watch the film to find out what that species is. It's directed by Brian Schultz, and we came to the project via Tribeca Studios, Google, and the United Nations as part of their global goals concern.
Nice tease for that film, Matthew. Okay, Anjali, tell us about District 15.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a film about not accepting the status quo. It's about a bunch of young people in Los Angeles, not too far from where I live, that are fighting big oil and trying to get big oil shut out of Los Angeles. So I came to the project through Patagonia Films.
Yeah, and Anjali, I'm going to start with you on this, and because I spent quite a bit of, I lived in LA for like 25, 30 years. And I remember there was a school that I played basketball, like in a basketball league. And literally right next to the school, there in LA proper, not even where District 15 is, there's a huge ass oil thing. And it was always the craziest thing to me. I mean, what is this thing doing in LA? Because I had no idea about about the Los Angeles oil industry, and nobody thinks about that. Nobody thinks about LA being oil. I live in Dallas, Texas. That's where the oil is, right here. So how how did you come on this project? And and being someone who's in LA, how much of it was an eye-opening experience for you, or was it?
Yeah, no, I think it was a completely eye-opening experience. It's entirely siloed, and how oil is treated in different neighborhoods is also really surprising and interesting. Like in my neighborhood, there's massive murals. So if you're not even aware, you wouldn't notice that there's a smokestack at the top of it. Whereas in Wilmington, it's like right there in front of you in somebody's backyards, the derrick is going away. you know, in part, one of the major reasons why LA grew to be what it is because of the oil industry. Like photographs from the earlier part of the last century was essentially like all of Venice Beach was full of derricks. It was like oil extraction absolutely anywhere. So it's not a question of like, did these things come into communities and specifically communities of color, but where have they left? And how is this being managed? And who's getting a chance at clean air and who's not? And so that's the kind of like trickiness in all of this, is like thinking about the nuance of environmental justice, not from the perspective of what's coming in, say like in Flint, Michigan, you know, like the water became bad. This is something that's been bad forever. And now as we understand more about the health implications, the cancers, the everything, like giving people an opportunity to have clean air and a good life.
Got it. Got it. Matthew, I want to jump to you now for Life Below Water, because you know this is a it's a quick hit doc. It's only like a couple minutes long, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So we and it has a wry sense of humor as it gets to the point that you guys are making with the film, and it's a subject that a few films have dealt with this in varying ways. Why did you take the approach that you did on this stuff?
Well, it's interesting. This is actually, so Life Below Water is the second short film that I've done with Brian Schultz. And our first one was for Flint, which was about the Flint, Michigan water crisis and the people who stayed behind to uplift their community through music, arts, and education. And that's what led us, we actually premiered it at Tribeca, and we played at EARTHX as well. And that's what led us to this project. So when Tribeca called us, they said, there's a group of filmmakers all over the world that are going to be part of this project with the United Nations. We don't know what global goal we're going to assign yet. You can safely assume it'll probably be something to do with water. And they had, there's a variety of global goals, from clean air to workplace safety to, human trafficking. There's an astonishing array of things that the United Nations covers, of course. So we get actually a couple of weeks into it, we get assigned Life Below Water. And it's really up to us now, along with the creatives at Goodby Silverstein and Partners, to come up with ideas. And so together we all came up with a few different ideas. One of them was actually going to be sushi made of plastic. We were going to do a whole Jiro Dreams of Sushi thing, but with plastic. And ultimately, we felt like we had a chance to stand out if we went underwater. And we knew that, knowing the pervasiveness of plastics already, doing a little bit of a more research dive into that, discovering, some of the astonishing information that's out there about it, and the trash gyres that are floating in the Pacific Ocean and in the Indian Ocean, it really started to kind of just speak to us. I believe, especially with documentaries, that oftentimes projects find you. And I think that this might be a case where the subjects found us. We got it immediately. We actually brought trash with us. We created props here in New York, sewed them together with nylon and everything, flew with a suitcase full of garbage and flew home with it as well, so that we wouldn't be bringing anything toxic to the police environment, or leaving behind anything. So, this was really something that we just latched onto as a real, almost a way to laugh at the problem, but in a like, oh, it hurts so hard when I laugh kind of way. Right.
I think it's crazy that you guys are flying around with trash.
Yeah. So did the TSA.
Well, holy crap! Oh my God, that is wild.
I was literally stringing together fake cigarettes on fishing line so they could swim.
Jeez Louise! All right, Kyle and Daniel. Arctic Summer. One of the interesting things about it is that having worked with EARTHx film from the beginning, and seeing a number of environmentally focused films and documentaries and what have you, is that at a certain point, you realize, you start expanding your idea of what constitutes an environmental doc. Because of course it's not everything is protests. Not everything is crazy pollution stuff. It invades all of our lives in a lot of different ways, and Arctic Summer is really almost a poster child in some ways regarding that. And you say that that the film took a little bit of a different turn than what you two thought it was going to be initially. Talk about that. Talk about what happened.
Yeah. So we really went into this expecting to make a climate film. The community of Tuck is experiencing massive amounts of shoreline erosion, and we kind of arrived in Tuck thinking that would be our film. And then we got there and we started talking to people, and everybody was so warm and welcoming and generous, and they all didn't want to talk about climate change too much. They had other issues, like, where am I going to get my next meal, or how do I work on getting my kid to care about school, and they had a lot of social issues that they were focusing on. And so when we got back and started editing this, we were having a lot of trouble. We were having a lot of trouble aligning our footage to what we thought we were going to make, and it took us 2 years to actually edit this thing. I think partially because it took a long time for us to let go of the idea of the film we wanted to make, and eventually we said, okay, let's try to how can we most authentically capture the feeling that the people in Tuck have and the feeling that we had when we were there. And to us, that was telling a story or painting a portrait of the lives of the people in Tuck, and having kind of climate change be a small and kind of looming undertone.
Well, I'm going to follow up on that with this question that I oftentimes ask feature documentarians, but I'm going to ask you because I think it really pertains to this, and because I'm always fascinated by this, and it's the idea that when you're making a documentary, oftentimes there's a moment. There's kind of like a eureka moment, and sometimes it happens while you're interviewing someone, while you're getting footage. Sometimes it happens in the editing bay, and where you as the filmmaker go, oh, this is the movie. I thought the movie was this. This is clearly the movie. I now know what the movie is. So I would love for both of you, because it may be a different moment for both of you, of where for Arctic Summer, like where you had that eureka moment.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I'll let Daniel go first, and then I'll say mine.
Okay. It's a great question. I think there are multiple points throughout the movie where, throughout the process of editing the film, where I thought, okay, this is what the movie's about, and then every week it would be like, wait, no, this is actually what the movie's about. And I actually think it wasn't until the end, when we had what we were calling our rough cut, and we started, talking to sound designers and colorists about, post production on this film, that something came up that personally, I don't know if I realized that we were doing, or maybe I had forgotten that we planned on doing this, but there was a real juxtaposition between the elders in the town and the youth in our film. And we realized that all the interviews were of elders sitting there in sort of static environments, and all of our footage of the youth was the youth running around outside, the camera's moving, there's a lot of movement, a lot of energy. And I'm sure we must have talked about this while editing it, or maybe we did it subconsciously, but our sound designer brought it up to us, and we realized that really this film is, we always knew it was about a loss of tradition in this town because of climate change. But I think through, our sort of subconscious or not editing of this film, we use like the camera and the way that the angles were and the movement of the camera to sort of portray the difference between generations in Tuck. So yeah, it took, and I think that it's the type of film where I watch it, and I've watched it hundreds of times now, but every time I see something new about it, that speaks to me about the footage, or yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Kyle, do you have a different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly happened. And then kind of another moment that was a little earlier in the process, but still, maybe a year and a half in, I think was when we, in editing, when we said, when we had this trial of kind of saying, okay, let's not try and edit this around a narrative that we were following. Let's just put together some of our favorite moments from the film, and let's watch those, put together. And I saw that, and that for the first time was when I thought, this is something that could be a short film.
Yeah. I think one of the things, I'm going to move to Anjali here in a moment, but one of the things that struck me watching the kids there is that it reminded me that, when you're, at a certain age, you are, it's all about, the craziness of what your body can do. And the thing, and right, and you go, and it doesn't matter what your environment. Like I grew up in South Florida, and so I was running around like little like palmetto forests and stuff, and doing shit like that. And you go, if that was my environment, and I'm a kid, and I'm still running around crazy like that. Just like the kids there are like going, well, we're jumping on the on this thing, and then we're running over here because this is just our environment. It may be sinking, but this is our environment that we're in right now.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And I think, I mean, for us, it like, I think we were so drawn to the kids because even though it was in this totally different environment than where both Daniel and I grew up, it felt, shockingly familiar. Yeah. Just running around, biking, having fun.
Exactly. All right, Anjali, here, I wanted to have you talk about the fact, because this is a Patagonia film, and there are a few companies that that fund documentary work, and and I was thinking about a film we had a couple years back at EARTHx. It was filmed by that was funded by Canadian Goose, and it was about polar bears and and what have you, and it's a similar conversation, because as documentarians you go, where am I going to get the money to make this thing? Who's going to pay for the plane ticket? How am I going, who's going, how am I going to do this? Because let's face it, I'm not making a movie star movie. So we're not talking about making a profit here. We're talking about sustaining this topic that I really needs to get done. So as a filmmaker, as a director, talk about that relationship with them in order to make this movie, and how for you as the filmmaker that relieved pressure, or did it add pressure?
That's a really good question. So the origin of this film is that I had a couple films actually playing at Mountain Film, a feature-length documentary that was very like environmental, and then I also had a short film that was that took place in Tuktoyaktuk. Well, it was a guy who was biking across Canada into the Arctic. So it was a Rwandan refugee, and that was from the Mountain Equipment Co-op, so another sporting brand. And so I met the producers of Patagonia while there. They watched my feature film, and they asked. They knew that they wanted to explore more in the climate space. That was important to them. And I have a background in climate science before I even started making films, so it just felt like a good fit. So I think from the perspective of like how these things start, it's just often very natural. And it does start to kind of go back to what Daniel and Kyle were saying. It really starts about what's happening on the ground. So they brought up this idea, they showed me the organization, and I just fell in love with these young women and their kind of perspective on the world. It's something that I've felt really strongly about for a long time, climate issues, but to see it through a new generation of young people is really interesting. So it really was just thinking about how to make the best film for them, for their purposes, but also something that could be cinematic. And in terms of like how that goes, I mean, I've worked in the commercial sphere for long enough to understand, when you're coming from it from an indie perspective, or when you're coming from it from a brand perspective. And that can be confusing, I think, or frustrating at the first, but then as you kind of move on in your career, you really see it as an opportunity. Like you're there to not only tell a story, but also tell a story for a purpose. And if you can kind of match those two things, then it can be quite enjoyable. You know, just you have a lot of people that are in the room, but everybody's motivated around making the same thing better.
Right.
So that can be really wonderful. And you know, that's what I've continued doing. So I mean, I do fully indie films that are long form and so on. And I do fully long form films that are commissioned, and I do all these mix and match. And I think that that's what the beauty of filmmaking is if you can really just experiment and grow and work with wonderful people. And that's the most important thing.
Right. And this leads us into what my final question, and I'm going to start off with Matthew on this one to lead off, and that is the idea that in our film festival universe, and there are just countless film festivals, even now, you know, even after a pandemic year where we've lost some, but there's still just thousands upon thousands, and because by this point, there are subsets of film festivals, and one is the environmental film festival, environmentally focused film festival. You know, there's almost, you know, a circuit purely now that can be created just on film festivals that delve on these. And Matthew, I want to start with you because I mean I've had your films at more than a few of my film festivals. You know, so talk about how that assists you as a filmmaker, kind of building the life, the journey of the film. As you gravitate. Now, of course, this is a short film, but you know, you've done, you know, other films as well. But talk about what that means, being part of that circuit and having that as something to look forward to, you know, whether it's this, whether it be well groomed or what have you, to go, okay, this is the life of the film, you know, that we can kind of look ahead. You know, from your perspective, what is that like now?
Well, what it's like now is like a giant pause button for the most part. I'm really impressed with this year's online offerings so far. Sundance and South by, the experiences were out of the park. True False is happening like as we speak. And they've got a whole thing called Teleported that David Wilson is overseeing. You know, listen, I think a lot of people think film festival and they think, oh, Sundance or oh, Cannes. Maybe if you're a little educated, you think Toronto, South by Southwest. But what people don't realize is that there are, like you said, hundreds of other film festivals that are no less important in quality and in community building, but oh so much more accessible. When you get to travel with a film, whether it's a feature or a short, you get to meet almost like a class of people that year that you're going to travel with from film festival to festival. And so you build a camaraderie within your filmmaking community that way. And then you meet more and more people like publicists, people like distributors, people like doctors and dentists who spend $10,000 to $30,000 a pop to help fund documentaries, country club investors, if you will. There is no one part of filmmaking that is not touched by the film festival community. Everything we do is symbiotic and reliant upon one another.
I describe it as an ecosystem because that's what it is. You know, and
that's
I mean,
right.
As someone, you know, I by this point, I think I represent close to 20 film festivals across the country now on the regional circuit, and I'm always amused when, you know, because in the trades, routinely, unless it's in New York or it's in LA, or it's one of the other big market festivals, you know, they don't really get, you know, cover. And, you know, and I always laugh when they go, well, the film festival is this. So we talked to the guy at NYFF, which used to be one of my fests. And you're going, that dude's never left the island of Manhattan. You guys, seriously, that has nothing to do with the vast regional film festival circuit. You know, that films, you know, oftentimes, you know, they live through that process.
Yep. I was co-producer of a movie called Freeland, directed by Kate McLean.
Yeah.
And we were, sorry, and Mario. we were set to premiere at South by Southwest, and it got canceled, of course, because of COVID. And it was a devastating blow to Mario Furlani and Kate and all the filmmakers and the stars. It's so important to your launch, right? It's like it's your big giant party to come out to the whole wide world and announce yourself. And the ratings that it garners and the buzz and the attention is like we found out this year, you literally cannot buy it.
Yeah. And we were just talking about Kyle and Daniel, your experiences on the green carpet at EarthX film a couple nights ago. And so for again for you guys, like now this is one of the first fests, I mean, of mine. I've had 3 now that have started to do the dipping the toe in the water for going back in person, versus the year of pandemic with all the virtual stuff. So, what does that mean to the two of you as filmmakers?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. It's really nice. I mean, I think a lot of people think of film festivals as, curation of films, but in a way it's also kind of curation of people. And it's, it's a self-selecting crowd of when you go to one of these things, like Matthew was saying, you meet really great people and future collaborators and potentially future investors and other filmmakers. And, EarthX did it in a very responsible and what to us felt like a safe way. And it was really awesome to meet people and talk to people in person about our film.
Yeah. Of course I'm very hyper, as everybody here knows, because you received the how to do the press email that I sent out to my filmmakers and how thoroughly, even on the protocol, and of course I was half joking about it on the green carpet, but at the end I even, had the the hand stuff, because I said, I joked, I said, to cleanse yourself of the dirtiness of doing press. But it's like, but the reality was, I said, every step of the way, if they said 6 feet, I said 8 to 10 feet, 1 mask, I said 2 masks, what have you. But that's the thing is that, the film festivals are there, to take care of you as filmmakers. Obviously in the moment, as we're talking about, but even beyond that, to create that community. And Anjali, I'd love for you to also address that in terms of how, for you, that you have been able to, in a real way, utilize going to film festivals to not just, further along the business of that individual film, but the business of you as a filmmaker as well.
Yeah, it's definitely community building. Like, you get to see these people who are your cohort from your very first film, moving through the space until you're getting commissions and everything like that. So I think that part of it is hard, but there is some element of, like, filmmaking is also the beauty of the craft and, like, spending time on the craft. And to some extent, I think, like, having my first year where I'm not just, like, constantly at film festivals the entire year, I've been a lot more reflective. I've been a lot more productive. I've been able to, like, think about my craft more. I've been able to, like, make more and create more with my community and things that I wouldn't normally have done. So I think that there's that balance. Like, I wouldn't want it to stay like this forever, but having a year off of film festivals has also been really positive for me and for a lot of other creators.
Well, it's I'm very was thrilled to see each one of your films, and like I said, I'm hoping to have them at more of my film festivals throughout the year, so I can continue to brag on each of your parts. Again, we've been talking with Danielle Fradin and Kyle Rosenbluth from Arctic Summer, Anjali Nayar from District 15, and Matthew Mills from Life Below Water. It's been wonderful talking movies with you guys. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for having us.